Very first book, Tower Treasure, first edition. This book has gone for as much as $15,000. Again, it's the red binding. And even though it's number one, and it's the first book in the series, it's actually not the most rare Hardy Boy. Even though people like to have the very first one of a series. I think a lot of my collecting influence was from other people. And that's part of obsessive compulsive behavior, I think, is when you talk to other people and you find out what they do, and you go, gee, that sounds kind of neat. And then you find out the stuff that they're doing, other people do too. And then you find out, well, this stuff has a value, it has a rarity, it has collectability, it has, it's something, it's like treasure, it's like finding treasure. And if it's something you could just go to the store and buy, you probably wouldn't want to do it. But because it's hard to find, that is part of the fun. You have to have a little bit of obsessive compulsiveness to collect, because a lot of collectors sometimes reach their zenith or don't reach their zenith and they give up. So they reach their zenith, they've collected everything they could get, and and completed a collection, and they give up. And then you've got some that can't complete the collection and they go, okay, I can't complete it, and they give up. So you've got to have a person who has that wherewithal to continue going. Welcome to the Hardy Boy Museum. Not only did I have Hardy Boys in here, but as you can see, every wall in here is covered with some type of collection that I have. I've got hard rock pins on this wall. I've got hard rock pins down here. I've got knives. I collect eagle knives. When I started collecting Hardy Boys, I read these as a kid. My dad didn't want me to read them because he wanted me to be a doctor. And so these were not appropriate for me to read because he wanted me reading science books. And they were exciting, but at night I would read Hardy Boys in my bed underneath the covers with a flashlight. And so he didn't like that. When I moved away from our house in San Bernardino and went to Long Beach State, I came home one weekend and all my Hardy Boys were gone that I'd read. And so years went by, and I go, gee, I'd love to, have some Hardy Boys again. We went on vacation to visit my wife's brother in Boulder, and I went to a little used bookstore that's in a mall up there. Here were some Hardy Boys without dust jackets, but they were the original stories that I'd read. I thought, oh, these are kind of neat, so I bought like 10 of them. And we were flying back, and I had the bag with me, and I took out one to look at it, and a couple passengers next to me, and they, oh, gee, I read those when I was a kid too. And we all got into this big discussion about Hardy Boys, The Hardy Boys deal with everything that a kid likes, caves and adventure and getting in fights and boats. When you read one of these books, it's got everything that a kid likes in it. So when I came home, I put these books without dust jackets on the shelf, and I go, I'd love to have all 40 again. So I started looking for the 40 books, and I wanted to get them with the dust jackets, because that's the neat thing, is the dust jacket. The dust jacket it's got the picture on it, it's in color. When a kid bought a kid's book, first thing usually kids would do is either throw the dust jacket away, thinking that it was an advertisement, because basically it was. There was a lot of advertisements on the back, and on the inside they had other things, and so it didn't have much appeal. And when you read the book, the dust jacket would tear anyway, and so it would look really ragged, and so a lot of kids just threw them away. When I started looking for the Hardy Boys in my later life, I found out that the dust jackets are really, really hard to find. The first format of the Hardy Boys, thick book with white spine, had the early Rogers art that is kind of archaic nowadays, so the art was changed later. But you can see the boys were dressed in that period of clothing. And this is the red binding. And to find a book in this condition is extremely difficult. So this tells you this book was set on a shelf and maybe read only once or twice, and then went to a collector's hands. I found out that there were previous issues done, and when they had done previous issues, some of the artwork was completely different than the artwork on the books that I had. So when it was done in 1927, they did the first 3 books to see how it would do, and they called that a breeder set. And the first 3 books were an instant success, so Stratemeyer had the author, ghostwriter, do number 4. Well, they reprinted the whole set. And when they did that, they changed the format just slightly. They might put some different ads in, or they might change the artwork on the front of the book, or they might change the binding on the front of the book. So collectors are familiar with all the different formats of these kids' books. Well, I want to have every different format from the beginning to the end. I want to collect every different format. So I started getting, format, but then I found out that there was variations in each format and variations in between those. That's called a completion collector. Just trying to get every printing variety. And with say the Hardy Boys, the collectors and the people who are in the know, I think there's probably about 1,600 different printing varieties of the 40 dust-jacketed books. And right now I've got, someone said I have the nation's largest, but I've got probably one of the largest collections. I've got about 1,250 of the 1,600. The very first format was, the books were done in thick variation, and they were red binding with white spine dust jackets, and those are extremely rare. Those go for anywhere from 300 to 15,000 a piece. And I have, I would say that probably, because the first 11 were done in that format, first 11 titles. And so of those 11 titles, there's probably about 75 different variations of those 11 titles in that red binding. And I have about 32. Find those books, if you can find them. The condition is very, very important on those. And if you can get one that has the dust jacket on it, you've got gold. It's the ones that survived with a dust jacket were probably in a well-to-do home, that maybe the kid was kind of a sissified type of kid, didn't want to loan his books out or anything, and that's how it survived. Just of Hardy Boys, there's probably a couple thousand collectors in the United States of Hardy Boys. Could be even more, because there's a core of collectors that keep in touch with each other, and that's how we know what's out there and whatnot. And just recently, there's one of the books, one of the dust-jacketed 40, a new first edition has emerged that no one knew about, and supposedly there's only 7 known of this book, and that's within the collecting sphere. Now, but there may be someone who collects Hardy Boys that doesn't know about our society that may have this book or may have a collection. But the thing is, as far as printing varieties, you have to be in this society to know what printing varieties are. You just couldn't do this on your own without having anyone else help you, because the knowledge has to be imparted from other people. It's just too hard to go try and find all these books and say, okay, well, because I've only found 30 varieties, that's all there are in the world. You've got to converse and compare notes with other people who do this. Everything is double stacked. And ones out front are dust jacketed varieties, and I have the blue cover, picture covers in the back, and those aren't the common ones. Those are the ones that were issued at the infancy of the transition from dust jacketed books to picture covers. And the first couple printings of the picture covers had the original stories. before they took the dust jackets off and rendered the stories politically correct. And what I mean by that is they shortened the stories, took all the exciting parts out, made them politically correct, basically denuded the story itself. So collectors want the original stories, so they especially like the ones with the dust jackets because those are the original stories. And there's several biographies done on printing varieties of the Hardy Boys. I was special advisor to two of those biographies, one done by a guy in Florida called the Bayport Companion, and that was a breakdown of all Hardy Boys dust jacketed books, all 40 titles. And then another guy in San Francisco wanted to expand on that, and he included that first biography or the checklist, and included the later picture covers, the blue picture covers. And so he put that in there, and the ending result of that is a book that's about 3 inches thick. And he used my collection to include in his checklist. And he and I conversed for 10 years, he asking me questions about each one of my books and every single point of difference in each one of my books. And sometimes to the point of ad nauseum. He went even further. He scanned each book on a computer to note if there was a period missing, or if there was, in fact, he even found a first edition, or actually a first state. He found a couple of first printings that were unknown. The rarest book of this series is number 11, which was done the second format, and the second format was brown cloth binding and brown end papers. There was only one print run of this in 1932, and this number 11 was just a one printing only, and it's extremely hard to find. The dust jacket was that was done on another format, so the dust jacket is now hard to find because you can switch it and put it on this book, but the book itself is the rarest Hardy Boy to find. Book Series Collectors Club keeps in touch with everybody, and there's a little pamphlet. It's called the Yellowback Press, and this guy is in Iowa, and he does articles on series books, not just Hardy Boys, but Nancy Drew's, and so it's basically kids' books, and talks about people's collections, and talks about authors, and gives insight into who the artists were for dust jackets, and just all kinds of neat little information. One time he profiled me, and I talked about my collection. He took a picture, or I sent him a picture, and he included my picture of my collection, and I talked about how I collect all the different varieties, and someone wrote in and said they thought I was a nut. Why collect more than just one title? Why have all these different formats? But that's part of my obsessive compulsiveness. I go, I don't want to collect anything other than Hardy Boys as far as kids' books. And a while back, I bought a collection, and the book itself is not a great book. It's a common book, but when I opened it up and looked through it, discovered that it was signed by Leslie McFarlane. And Leslie McFarlane was the author of the first 26 Hardy Boys. And you can see it was dated June 4th, 1955, which corresponds with when this book was published. Not the publishing of the title, but the publishing of this particular printing. So everything fits in. This is the only copy that I know of that was signed by Leslie McFarlane. Book collectors love to talk about their collection. They love to share information. They love to put their collection out for people to see. And books can be easily displayed, and collectors don't worry about other people coming in and looking at them and touching them and perusing them. I've never failed to help people with the information that I know. It's taken me 25 years to learn about books that I have, and I'm more than welcome to share that with anybody that asks me. And a lot of people have approached me. I've had people from all over the nation come and look at my book collections. And one guy was a pastor from Minnesota, and he'd heard about my collection. He flew all the way over here just to see my collection, bought some Hardy Boys from me. Another guy was from Texas. And these are people, the ones that have visited me, these were the ones who've really got it bad. They've got that OCD really bad. And they just, they knew that I had supposedly the nation's largest collection, and they knew I had books for sale, and every one of them that come here buy books from me. These are all my duplicates. So I haven't done any selling in a while. Since the internet has come in, I've decided to replenish my stock before I start trading and selling again to other collectors. So I've been just basically accumulating. So this is my accumulation. This is stuff that is for other collectors. And I try and give them a good deal, but they basically just wanted to see my collection, and it's kind of what I like to do too. When I talk to another collector and see what they have or hear what they have, it goads me on to want to do more, to better my collection, whatever it's in. And I've got a hoard. I hoard stuff, but mine is from a collector's mind. I do the research. Every book that I have in my Hardy Boy collection is identified, and I educate myself with and other people about the hobby. So I'm not just a hoarder. I'm not just an accumulator. I'm a collector. But you have different gradations of collectors, and some collectors will say, well, when I decide to pass on, I'm going to give this to my kids. And some collectors go, this is too valuable even for my kids. I'm going to give it to, say, a museum. And some people go, you know what? The only reason why I did this is because I was greedy, and because I knew this was valuable. It was like my own little gold mine. But now that I'm getting old, I want to sell it off. I don't want to give it to my kids because it's too valuable to give them, because what would they do with it? They wouldn't know what the value of it is. They don't have the intrinsic value that I have, and so they would just sell it off in a garage sale and make nothing for it. So some collectors, when they tire of their collection or they're getting very, very old, they'll sell their collection off to other collectors, and they feel that it's better to spread the wealth among the other collectors. A game that was in use for the Mickey Mouse Hardy Boys serial that was on TV in the 50s, Disney. Like with me, I collect stuff that pleased me. It may not please you. You may not give a rat's tail about Hardy Boys or about old picture postcards, but to me it brings back warm fuzzies. Because other people have said, well, how come you don't collect other kids series? And I go, because I'm with Hardy Boys, and with my resources and my room, the room that I have, when I find, I keep track of how many books I find a year that I add to my collection of Hardy Boys. And some years I may only find 1 or 2 books a whole year that I can add to my collection. But that's enough for me to keep going and knowing that I'll never complete it. And just as long as that zenith is up there, that means that I can keep going. If I were to complete it, I'd probably say, probably want to sell it now, and which a lot of collectors do. But just as long as I've got something to keep going, it keeps me pursuing it. And these are first editions of the Norwegian variety, done in Norse language. I've got Japanese, I've got French, I've got Spanish, I've got German, I've got Yiddish. I'm missing probably about 6 or 7 different languages, but I'm still working on that. I understand there's Polish, there's Russian I'm missing. Since the internet, the internet is, like I said, has kind of ruined things. And we used to have conventions where we'd all get together, but this was pre-internet. And so now that the internet has come in, a lot of people have their own websites, and so there's not as much of a togetherness that there used to be. And so I haven't talked with a lot of people in a number of years now, and things have kind of died down as far as the friendly circle. So that's why I say I don't know that I have the nation's largest collection. I did at one time. A lot of the collectors, like if you were to talk to somebody who collects Hardy Boys and mention my name, most likely they'd say they've heard of me. But knowing that I have what I have from what I've done, and it's a feeling of achievement, like I was telling you before, to try and get a collection that I have now, to build that collection now, starting now, would be almost impossible. A lot of these books are so hard to find, and you just don't see them come up anymore. Last time I read a Hardy Boy was when I was 16, and I'm afraid if I were to read one now, it would burst my bubble, and I'd say, I probably don't want to read these, or I don't want to keep these anymore. You accumulate, but then what decides whether you're going to throw it in a drawer and forget about it, or if you want to make a collection out of it and identify it and talk to other people about it and read about it and categorize it and help other people collect that particular thing. That's the fun thing about collecting.